In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells the parable of the Good Samaritan. In it, a Jewish traveller is beaten, robbed and left half dead along the road. First a priest and then a Levite come by, but both avoid the man. Finally, a Samaritan comes. Samaritans and Jews generally despised each other, but the Samaritan helps the injured Jew. The parable of the Good Samaritan was told by Jesus to illustrate that human kindness should be available to all, regardless of religion, race and gender. But how far can that human kindness stretch?
So the characteristics of being race, age, person, lady, female, whichever it may be, would affect somebody's decision to help somebody. I would suggest that a lady would be less likely to help a man.
Yes.
I would have helped the injured person.
I think so, yes.
I would, yeah.
I most certainly would.
I agree with you, I would.
Yes, I would have helped the injured person.
Yes, I would definitely help the injured person.
Most people would stop if they felt that someone needed help.
We all know we should stop and help someone in need, regardless of the situation. But what if you were in a hurry and you saw someone in need of your help? Would you still stop? Just because our own sense of morality tells us how we should react in this situation, doesn't mean this is always the case. It appears that our surroundings and personal agenda affect us more than we think.
Depending on the injury, obviously, if it was something serious, then I'd call the emergency services.
Assess the situation, whether there's any danger to myself going to the person.
To get the ambulance involved as well, because they've got to do anything, yes.
It depends on the injury. For example, if someone couldn't walk properly, I'd like to think that I'd be a support for them to cross a road or something like that.
To assess probably the injuries to the person or why were they lying on the floor.
Ask bystanders, invariably there are, to call the appropriate emergency services, be fire, police, ambulance.
I think if it had been in England, one would not necessarily immediately call the emergency services out. One would try and find out what was wrong.
Social influence plays its part in situations such as this. Bystanders will monitor the reactions of other people to see if it's necessary that they help. When they see others not reacting, well, they think they don't need to help as well. Sociologists and social psychologists explain this using the bystander effect.
First of all, do we notice it as an emergency? Do we see it as an emergency situation? So we may say yes or no. If we say no, then we walk away, we don't help. So first of all, it's whether or not we see it as an emergency. Secondly, do we assume responsibility? So again, yes or no. If we say no, we walk away. So we're more likely to assume responsibility if there are less people around. The more people that are around, we tend to look to others to assume that responsibility.
I think the majority would walk past.
I think it depends where you are.
Most people would stop.
I think a lot of people would walk past these days.
I think people would help. I think some people would walk past, but I think people would help.
After canvassing 100 people, 59% male and 41% female, we discovered that a staggering 100% of the general public say they would help regardless of the situation. Now, we would all like to believe that we, like those we asked, would help someone who desperately needed it. However, this is not always true. On March 13th, 1964, in the Kew Gardens area of Queens, New York, Miss Catherine Kitty Genovese was stabbed several times and raped. The attack was said to have taken place for half an hour, in which the attacker left and then returned to continue the assault. On the 27th of March, the New York Times published an article entitled 37 Who Saw Murder and Didn't Call the Police.
Actually, that murder took place over about 3/4 of an hour, so it wasn't quick, and there were at least 37 people who either heard or witnessed the incident. And what was interesting is that people didn't intervene, and psychologists have come up with what's called a cognitive decision model based on whether or not people decide to intervene in situations like this. And when the police actually interviewed some of the witnesses after the event, they asked them why they didn't help. And the interesting comments that came back were, well, we thought she was having an argument with a partner, we didn't want to intervene, it wasn't our place to intervene. But what was most interesting was there was at least 37 people who heard or saw that murder happen.
The bystander effect may be used to explain why people repress their need to help in certain situations. But in fact, the bystander effect is rather complex and fails to recognise the context and personal views of those involved.
So next time someone asks you, would you help regardless of the situation? Think carefully before you answer, because you never know when you might be ignoring someone that needs your help.